I'm Teresa Caraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today my topic is the Victim Dad PsyOp, or weaponizing family court. This is in response to an interview that Malik did of a guy who calls himself Tim, who will not give his actual name or show his face. This is what Ahmed wrote in his summary of that interview. Abuse does not have a gender. Abusers can be male or female, and victims can be male or female too. And the patterns, the tactics, the psychology of abuse are remarkably consistent, whether you are talking about an individual relationship, a workplace, an organization, or even government systems. We talked about coercive control, psychological manipulation, and the quiet, often invisible suffering that many men endure behind closed doors. What struck me most is how deeply ingrained the narrative is that men are always the perpetrators, rarely the victims. And because of that, so many men suffer in silence, isolated, ashamed, and with nowhere to turn. Tim shared his own experiences, and you could hear the weight of it, the slow erosion of self-worth, the confusion, the cognitive dissonance, the way abuse creeps in gradually, like that frog in the pot analogy, until you don't even recognize what's happening anymore. And when men do react, often through anger, that reaction is then used against them as proof that they are the problem. That's the trap. We also talked about reactive abuse, one of the most misunderstood dynamics, where the victim is pushed to the breaking point and then blamed for their reaction. It is manipulation at its most insidious. Let's dive in. Tim has made a business out of coaching the courts and their representatives in how to recognize and believe male victims. He has an organization called Stand Again in Australia, and his YouTube channel is StandAgainAU. He says that it is for male victims of emotional abuse and coercive control. 565 YouTube videos for male victims of family violence. These videos include spiritual abuse, weaponizing your connection to God, all in caps. Feigned forgetfulness, how abusers erase what they did. Hoovering, how she tricks you back into the coercive relationship. And this has a picture of a woman in a negligee. However, I watched a little of it, and it says, she'll start by calling you, and then she'll say, I miss the family we built together. I've been in therapy and I want to try again. So this is not about bringing someone back. This is a woman whose kids have been taken from her, who is trying to reconnect with her kids by doing whatever it takes to please that man. And his video is on how to not fall for it. And then turning professionals against you. And his coaching is to make sure that those professionals know that men can be abused too. This is an ongoing discussion between Ahmed and myself. The last one I summarized in an episode called Does Sex or Love Make a Man a Father? What I was looking at there is whether the production of sperm through ejaculating into a woman, is it equal to the production of a baby in the emotional bond created with that child? And should that sperm injector be able to override what the mother believes is best for that child? And most importantly, who the mother believes is best for that child and who should be kept away. It is my belief that children belong to and with their mothers. And Ahmed, although he considers himself to be an anarchist, believes that the one time that the state should be allowed to intervene is to take children away from their mothers, if, in their decision, they think that mother is a narcissist or a psychopath or one of these abusers. So these are words that are not neutral. These are words that have a definite legal consequence, and that's what I want to look at. In the interview, Ahmed made this statement: "Sexual abuse and physical abuse is obviously just terrible, but psychological abuse, just because it's invisible, doesn't mean it's any less painful and harmful." I'd like to question Ahmed on that. If you had the Sophie's choice of saying, I am going to send my daughter to go live with this person who is going to rape her and beat her, or I'm going to send her to live with someone who is going to psychologically manipulate her and call her names and insult her, is there any question which you'd choose? I don't think any of us should be in a relationship in which we are belittled. Obviously not. I'm not saying that. We should all be getting out of those relationships and taking responsibility for the fact that we got into them in the first place. But you don't need to say, I'm being abused, and use that word to mean insult, to mean things that are, in the end, words. Are words equal to acts of violence? Are they equal to sexual violence? That's what I want to look at. Ahmed has also been in what he describes as an abusive relationship, in which he said there was also physical violence, although he hasn't elaborated on what that was. In Tim's case, the abuse and the violence is all words, which leaves the inability to be able to verify anything because, for one, he's going by a pseudonym. He says it's because he doesn't want his ex to find him. Now, that's absurd if he has already gone through the divorce and potentially has already gotten custody of the kids. He never elaborates on that. But he says, oh, I don't want the kids to know what it was that their mother did. Well, the kids were there. And at one point he says, the reason that I decided to do something is because my wife went nuclear, which is his term for it, and I saw that our two young, beautiful daughters, they didn't even react. This was normalized for them, and I decided that I should not let them think that this was normal. So if he doesn't want them to think it's normal, then he should be making sure that they do know exactly what it was that he has stood up to. He should want that out there rather than telling them, oh, we just didn't get along. That's not something that is credible, especially when he says that when he went to court, which happened to coincide with when he got laid off from his job or found redundant, where he had been a director at an important company that's not named, where he had a staff of 20. And then when he found himself without that job, he decided that he talked to a counselor who said, no, what you're going through is abuse, and coached him on the language to use. And he went through 4 lawyers before finding a woman who said, yes, I will defend you and show that, yes, you are a man who is a victim of abuse. But there is no record of that. And when he says, I don't care about the money, it's about the kids, I just want to protect my kids. In that former story, they're not even alarmed. The fact that mom's mad doesn't impact them whatsoever. They continue playing on the floor, and that's what upsets him. But clearly, they are in no danger from the mom. So him wanting to protect them is a outright lie. And that is the discrepancy that you need to look for when you're trying to figure out whether someone is telling the truth. Tim's anonymity means that we never hear the ex-wife's version of the story. Instead, he and Ahmed both describe themselves as survivors. Should that term be used when someone is not in danger of losing their life? Women's shelters are full of women who have left abusers and in the process have given up their homes, all their possessions, their income, and instead have gone to a place where the only thing they have is being safe. That's someone who's afraid. And one of the things Tim says is, well, we don't recognize abuse because men don't use the term fear. That's not part of their vocabulary. Well, duh, because they're not. That's not something they are. They are being insulted, belittled, if we believe them. And that's entirely a great reason to leave a relationship. It is not a reason to then call your spouse an abuser and instead use it legally as a way to take away her children. Tim draws the following equivalencies. He says, men express physically. I have never heard a victim of domestic violence say, yes, my husband, he expressed physically. Women use psychological manipulation. Men react with anger and physicality. That is a very neutral term, don't you think? Women use coercion, insults, yelling, threats, parental alienation. Put a pin in that because that is a loaded term. Stonewalling and gaslighting. Men cope by shutting down, not letting their friends know how awful their partner is. Because men need more clubs where they can get together and trash talk about the women that they're with. Don't you think? That's much better than going to counseling. Ahmed asked him, so statistically, like how many men versus women are abused? And Tim says, whatever the statistic is, I don't believe it because men just don't admit it. They say that it's men are 1 in 3, but I don't believe that. 1 in 3? That was a pretty shockingly high number to me, but he thinks it's got to be more like 1 in 2. So this is something that I think we need to clarify, that abuse is not about how someone treats you. It's about them having power over you, power to prevent you from leaving. Women don't have power over men. They don't have physical power over men. They generally don't have financial power over men. And if they do, I will blame the man. There is nothing that is preventing a man from leaving and providing for himself. And as in the example with Tim, saying I had to stay and protect the children, I think that taking children away from their mother is never something that you're doing for the good of the children. You are making them in a more vulnerable place. Ahmed talks about women who are narcissists, who have borderline personality disorders. And Tim says, yes, abusers cannot look inside. They feel guilty, and so they project that onto you. They say abusive things like, I'm incapable of making money, so I need you to give me money. That is an abusive statement. He talks about abusers as being adult toddlers, 60-year-old toddlers who are throwing a tantrum. But when you call someone a 60-year-old toddler, that's perfectly acceptable because they are. Some of the signs that you've been abused include this brain fog, this forgetting. Cognitive dissonance makes you think, oh, that lovely person could never have done that to me. And so all of a sudden you have a flash of something and you say, I can't believe I didn't tell that to the lawyer. Well, that's not your fault. It's not because it didn't happen. She gaslit you into thinking that it didn't happen. But that is just another sign that she has done this to you and you are trauma splitting. Ahmed and Tim talk about what kept Ahmed in his relationship for 5 years and Tim in his for 10. And they say that women use against men their fear of abandonment, their rejection, their feeling that they don't deserve better. So this is a man's own sense of self-esteem that the woman is now being blamed for, that it is her job to prop up that self-esteem and not for the man to say, yes, I do deserve to be loved and leave without taking the children. But there are some women who really get this, and that, Ahmed says, are the mothers. At first, I was confused until I realized he meant the mothers of the husbands. They're the ones who are like, my sweet baby boy, he doesn't deserve this. She doesn't treat him as well as I would. There's no reason he should put up with this. Now, yes, I am being sarcastic because every time from the women's groups that I dealt with where children had been taken away from their mothers and given to abusers, they said there was always a woman involved. It was either the mother or a new girlfriend or a new wife, but never did it happen where there wasn't a woman behind the scenes saying, oh yes, bring those children back here. She doesn't deserve them. Tim collects stories through his support group. One he talks about as a CEO who had an entire company of employees fawning over him, I would assume, but his wife gave him no respect at home. Is that someone we're supposed to feel sorry for? The one example that Tim uses of a woman who has a weapon is a husband who is cowering behind a locked bathroom door with the kids while the wife is outside brandishing a knife. Now, if that story's true, that woman is an idiot because men are physically stronger and you have to get close enough to use a knife where they can just turn it against you. I am not believing anything that Tim is coming forward with except that he is working with the family courts and making sure that men understand that they can play this game too. And because there is no proof, even though women do offer proof generally when they say that they're abused, they take photographs of their injuries. They record things. They are happy to have witness statements taken from the kids. These are things that women do, and the courts are not even listening to it. Tim makes some other telling statements about how his own mother didn't believe him, how his sister-in-law was told by his wife that Tim was stressed at work and taking it out on everybody else. He says that his wife once called CPS, Child Protective Services, and they came in with the starting premise that she was telling the truth. He's horrified by that, as if that isn't the job of Child Protective Services. At the end, Ahmed asked, what do we do about this? And Tim says it's controversial, but removing unconscious bias from the family court system. Zon Villains in Liberating Motherhood has looked at that myth that the courts are biased towards mothers. This is what she writes. Abusive fathers are especially successful. 72% win their custody cases. In one study where both parents fought hard for custody, mothers were awarded custody just 7% of the time. Only in a patriarchal society does a 93% win rate somehow equate to male victimhood. Contrary to what men's rights advocates would have you believe, though, women don't win custody on false claims of domestic violence. Numerous studies have shown the opposite. Women are twice as likely to lose custody when they report abuse, even when that abuse is documented. No such bias exists for fathers, who do not lose custody at higher rates when they claim abuse, which is not documented. Courts are also eager to place children with male parents whom the child says has abused them. According to this series of case reports, which is linked in the Substack, 59% of abusive fathers were given sole custody, suggesting that abusers are actually at an advantage. And even when the fathers did not get sole custody, not one single abuser was denied contact with the child. In 2/3 of cases, the court pathologized the mother for attempting to protect the child, punishing her for her protective instincts, and reducing her contact with the child. Tragically, the same review found that 88% of children placed with abusive fathers experience new episodes of abuse after the father gained custody. In summary, if domestic violence is going to include a woman criticizing a man, what words do we have left for when women are brutalized and fearing for their life or for the violence done to their children? What do we call it when a woman is so afraid that she has to leave everything behind in order to protect herself and her children? If you want to see the consequences of this policy and this PsyOp, as it certainly is, look at the Substack on Women's Coalition News and Views. And for more I've done on this topic, here is the feminization PsyOp and responding to Ahmed's interview of me, Does Sex or Love Make a Man a Father? Thank you for watching.